Hey everybody, what's good? We're going to be taking a look at this video that's named What Aristotle Knew About Oligarchy That We Forgot. And if you don't know, what an oligarchy is a small group of people having control of a country, an organization, or an institution. So people say kind of like Vladimir Putin with all his homies in Russia and stuff like that. Anyway, we're going to take a look at this video. While we look at this video, I'm going to be working on a kid's book. And I want to remind you that if you want to go get some really cool clothes that I think would look good on you, you should go to coconutjustice.com. Let's get into it. What Aristotle knew about oligarchy that we forgot. We need to hurry up and remember because there's a lot of dorky ass people out here trying to form oligarchies and stuff, and not for anything, but an oligarchy is the complete opposite of a democracy. I trust that a group of people is always going to be stronger and smarter than just one person. I don't believe that the United States needs a strong man. I don't believe that. I know for a fact that I don't need a rich dude who has been handed everything tell me the what's what. You know what I mean? I've been through way too much. I've learned way too much. It's just, it's not in my vocabulary. I don't need a strong man to tell me shit. All right, let's see what Aristotle thought.
Imagine a society where the wealthiest few don't just influence laws, they write them. Where they don't just benefit from policies, they create them. Where state power isn't just swayed by wealth, it's wielded by it. Sounds familiar? Well, over 2,300 years ago, in his great work Politics, Aristotle identified a system of government he called oligarchy, rule by the wealthy few. Based on his studies of history and politics, he described how this system arises, how it maintains power.
For some reason, politicians and our leaders out there have convinced everyone that money shows that you're smart. Not for anything, but I know, and I talk to anyone who will talk to me back. There's just a lot of very, very wise people that don't have money. And there's a lot of rich people that think that they're smarter than other people. It's not a good ruler. We've had videos, we've talked about this very thing on this channel a few times already. Yeah, just because you have money in the bank don't mean anything except maybe that your parents did good. You know what I mean? Everyone likes to hype up Elon Musk and stuff like that. Like, Elon is smart. I'll give him that, but like, he ain't, come on now. He's not the one flipping rockets. He's doing silly little jumping jacks on stage with that other dumbass. Anyway.
Why it's inherently unstable. As you read Aristotle's description of oligarchy, you might start to recognize some unsettling parallels to your own society today. From the concentration of wealth to the influence of money in politics, Aristotle's ancient insights in many ways feel eerily modern. So in the next few minutes, we'll break down Aristotle's blueprint of oligarchy, perhaps uncovering how its ancient patterns may still occasionally echo in the corridors of power today. To understand Aristotle's view of oligarchy, we first need to understand his categories of regime types. In his typical systematic approach, Aristotle identified 6 distinct types of government, divided into 2 categories. There are the true forms and their perverted counterparts. Within the 3 true forms, we have monarchy first. In its ideal form, the monarch would be virtuous and govern for the common good. Next is aristocracy, which is ruled by a select few. For Aristotle, these aren't just the wealthy or the well-born, but the aristos, meaning the best, most virtuous, and most capable members of society. The third true form is what Aristotle called polity, sometimes translated as constitutional government. This is a mixed system, blending elements of democracy and oligarchy, but with a strong legal basis that prevents any powerful group from abusing the others. Now, for each of these, Aristotle identified a corresponding perverted form, a government that shares similarities with its true counterpart, but has deviated from the path of virtue and common good. Monarchy's corrupt twin is tyranny, as I presented in a previous video, and democracy is seen by Aristotle as the perverted form of polity. It's rule by the masses, but without the legal limits of the polity, where decisions are driven by the majority's desires rather than the common good. For Aristotle, this often leads to demagoguery, instability, and the erosion of justice. And finally, we come to oligarchy. As Aristotle notes, the poor and the rich fight with each other, and whichever side wins doesn't set up a fair or popular government. Instead, they see political power as their prize for winning, and one side sets up democracy, while the other sets up an oligarchy. Remember, aristocracy is ruled by the aristos, or the best. Oligarchy, on the other hand, is a perversion of this ideal.
That's what we're seeing today, what he's describing today. Republicans, their approach is that the rich people should be making all of the decisions because they're smarter. Otherwise, why would they? Everyone would have money if they were as smart as the people who are running the Republican Party, right? Democrats are the opposite. They want equality and a democracy and more people. They want more people to make decisions, and then the perversions of that are what he's about to get into. But the point that I'm trying to make is everything that he's talking about currently right now in this video is what we're seeing. It's a different approach to governing people. But again, I think that there is a lack of leadership. Leadership has lost its focus. Instead of racing to see who has the biggest bank account, I think a society should be judged by the strength of the people that they have in their communities or in their population. You know what I mean? Like, what good is having Elon Musk be the richest person in the world that lives here if we have more homeless people than everyone else on the planet? And I don't know if that's a fact. I know that Elon is considered the richest person, but I don't know if it's a fact that we have the most homeless people. So anyway, let's see what he says.
Focus shifts from the welfare of the community to the interests of the rulers themselves. It's no longer about who is most capable or most dedicated to the common good, but about who has the most money or property. In aristocracy, leaders are chosen based on their ability to govern well and their commitment to the public interest. In oligarchy, the path to power is paved with gold, and the purpose of rule becomes the preservation and expansion of the ruler's wealth and influence. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process from usually polity, democracy, or aristocracy, and often subtle at first. Perhaps wealth starts as just one factor among many in selecting leaders, but over time, it becomes the dominant or even sole criterion. Or maybe virtuous leaders slowly begin to prioritize their own interests over those of the community. Aristotle noted that oligarchies, like tyrannies, are forms of government where power is used to benefit those in control rather than the broader community. So both systems are self-serving, but while tyranny is ruled by one person and his close circle, an oligarchy is ruled by a few more individuals. But more importantly, tyrants often rely on military force, whereas oligarchs first and foremost gain and maintain their power through their wealth.
That's what he's describing is what Putin is. If you for office against Putin, it's well known that he makes people take dirt naps. And this is something that, like, I know people say, Trump, you need to take whatever he says with a grain of salt. Like, I don't think so. I think he talks in a very... He subscribes to this shit.
It's written into the law, but often it's just based on informal influence, which leads to laws and policies that favor the wealthy. The main point is that power is kept within the wealthy few, either through high property qualifications for holding office or by making the process of running for office too expensive for most people.
So in the past, in history, in order for you to vote here in the United States, you used to have to, there was a poll tax. You used to have to pass like IQ exams, and there was always some hurdles that normal people had to jump over just to vote. In a true democracy, everyone's voice should be heard. And that's why we have voting and stuff like that. Who you vote for, whatever. Those folks are supposed to be doing what you want them to do. And again, this is another misconception. Government tells us what to do, but that's not how it's supposed to happen. We hire people to run the government, and the government is supposed to be doing what it takes to satisfy everything that we're asking them for. All of the expectations that they set by being on TV forever, and all these ads and all these Facebook ads and all this propaganda that they're giving you, we're supposed to be holding their feet to the fire because we hired them to do the specific thing that we asked them to. And these days, they're just, they're spending a lot of money. They're spending a lot of time and money in the stock market, and they're getting rich AF. Normal people are struggling.
This financial control allows them to operate within existing legal and political systems, manipulating these systems to suit their needs. This gives oligarchies an appearance of legitimacy.
What he just said, everyone always says that this country has two-tiered justice system. If I were to go out and do something like, I don't know, wave my hands in the air and talk about people needing to die because they don't agree with me and all this stuff, it's going to be tough for me to get through court and not go to jail type of thing. Whereas there's other people out here that we see that are flapping their arms and doing all kinds of stuff, saying some wild things. Would never see the inside of a courtroom. Two-tiered justice system.
Seem more stable than tyrannies, but Aristotle still considered them unstable at their core. Oligarchs are skilled at using their political power to protect and grow their wealth. They might pass laws that give them lucrative government contracts, protect business monopolies, or create regulations that limit competition. These tactics can sometimes lead to supreme oligarchy, where the wealthy have unchecked power and ignore any appearance of cultural or constitutional limits. In these cases, decisions are made solely for the benefit of the ruling elite rather than for the good of society.
Exactly.
This disregard for the common good is another trait that oligarchies share with tyrannies, making them similarly dangerous to a state's stability. Also, like tyrants, oligarchs tend to distrust the general population. They might disarm the common people and hire foreign mercenaries to guard against potential uprisings. This reflects their very real fear of losing control, leading them to keep the poor.
With the military, we see this. We're seeing this. We even see it not having to do with the president. During Black Lives Matter, there was a certain population that had security guards and all kinds of stuff. Meanwhile, there's normal people just saying, can you please stop killing us in the streets, please?
Sometimes even pushing them out of cities by making urban living too expensive, or taking more direct measures to maintain their grip on power. Aristotle pointed out that oligarchy isn't a single uniform system, but rather a spectrum with different types. On one end, there are extreme forms where only the very richest have power. In other forms, a small, powerful minority controls the government, and while it might seem open to those with modest wealth, it remains firmly in the hands of a gatekeeping inner circle. So how do these oligarchies come to power? Aristotle explained that it often starts with a gradual shift. A small group of people begin to accumulate more wealth, which in turn allows them to gain more political influence. As their power grows, they shape policies and institutions.
Very direct example of this is slavery. You had white folks that took advantage of black folks and worked them literally to death. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking because this country was built on just bullshit, on on taking advantage of people. Just because they have money, these folks think that that they can do everything, that they can do anything. So when normal people are like, "Yo, you can't do that anymore. Stop doing that shit to me." And then they have a bunch of you guys convinced. Some of you poor people need to wake up, because this shit is happening and you are going to be on the wrong side of history.
In ways that further increase their wealth, creating a cycle where wealth leads to power and power leads to more wealth. A system that seems democratic or aristocratic can start to slide into oligarchy without most people noticing. Over time, certain signs become clearer. The wealthiest begin to control all key government roles and institutions. Merit and ability become less important than wealth for gaining leadership positions. And the idea that economic inequality also justifies political inequality becomes more accepted. Once an oligarchy is established, the people in power use several tactics to keep their hold on power. First, they use state power to keep class distinctions in place, reinforcing social barriers that prevent people from moving up. This might involve controlling the education system to ensure that only their children can afford the opportunities for leadership roles.
There's an administration that is running for office right now that wants to do away with the education system. My high school, the high school that I graduated from just a few years ago, I saw a video not too long ago from a few years ago where they didn't have enough money to keep the library. So all of the kids they didn't have access to books because they couldn't afford a librarian. So they lost their librarian. I worked at a high school where they had computers in every classroom, and they had their own media group and technology for making their own stuff, making their own media. Like, they would full on cover their sporting events and all kinds of stuff. Meanwhile, the one in Chicago didn't even have a damn librarian. So this is what they're talking about. They're trying to do away with the education system, and then poor people are going to have poor education, and the rich people are going to have all of the best teachers because they can afford all of the best teachers. How is that fair?
Or enacting laws that make it harder for those born into lower classes to build wealth or social status. Gradually, oligarchies take control over the legal system and lawmaking process. They shape laws to serve their interests, often claim.
If you want a job, the first thing they do is they look at your education. You have to have money to have the proper education in order to impress the boss. Not to mention, let's say that there is a boss. That boss has friends. Those friends have kids. Those kids are going to get first dibs. So by the time you get to regular inner city folks from the inner city of Chicago, these jobs are being taken up by the friends, the kids of friends and stuff like that. Now let's move on to why it's important to integrate kids into better schools. You're building relationships at these schools that is going to carry you throughout your life. So that's why when you see politicians, they all come from the same schools. You see business owners, they all come from the same schools. And then just normal, regular people, we just don't ever get a shot. What he's saying is it possible? Technically. But we all know, you have to go to like Diddy parties and shit to like break through. And not everybody wants to go to a Diddy party. Let's get back to it, to these guys, how they fix society. We're going to talk about how they have fixed government. They make rules off of what the hell is better for them and their pocketbooks, not the entire country. Because if they were looking at the entire country, we would be educating our kids a lot better. We wouldn't have to worry about Well, number one, we wouldn't even be talking about illegal aliens coming from the south of the border and stuff like that, taking these apple picking and strawberry picking jobs, because that would be beneath us. We need to be prepared for programming jobs, math jobs, art jobs, all of these things. All of these things are building tomorrow, and our population is not ready for it. They're just not. And it's all because our leaders are so goddamn greedy that they can't invest in our education system. They barely invest in roads. Go up and down Chicago streets and see how big of a pothole you can park your Honda in.
Is to build wealth or social status. Gradually, oligarchies take control over the legal system and lawmaking process.
Exactly.
They shape laws to serve their interests, often claiming they are just protecting property rights or maintaining economic stability. This can mean taxes that benefit the wealthy or regulations that protect their businesses from competition. Eventually, the wealthy begin to exert influence over all crucial aspects of society, perhaps the primary industries, major trade routes, or the means of cultural production. Furthermore, oligarchies rely on strong alliances among elites. These aren't just political alliances, but also social and economic connections, like intermarriage between powerful families, shared business interests, and exclusive clubs. These connections create a tightly knit ruling class that works together to maintain its control. Over time, this concentration of power and wealth often leads to a decline in public virtue, where personal gain takes priority over the common good among all members of society. At this point, you might be wondering how these ancient insights apply to the world around us, while Aristotle was examining the city-states of ancient.
If you are threatened by an educated population, you should not be in charge. If you look forward to taking advantage of the uneducated, you should not be in power. You should be in power so you can actually educate and motivate people, your population. We like to walk around and talk about how wonderful this country is and stuff like that, but meanwhile, our education system is horseshit.
His observations on oligarchy were remarkably astute and perhaps relevant to a few other societies throughout history. Let's consider some signs that might indicate the presence of oligarchic tendencies. First, look at laws and regulations that benefit the wealthy at the expense of the general populace or society at large. This isn't always obvious. It might be hidden in complex tax codes or subtle regulatory structures. Imagine, for instance, a tax code that allows owners of luxury yachts to claim significant deductions while providing no comparable options for ordinary citizens. Next, examine economic policies. Do they tend to increase concentration of wealth?
Can you put anything like that on your taxes? These guys are getting tax breaks for buying a goddamn yacht, and your ass can't even float a little rubber ducky in the bathtub when you're trying to take a bubble bath.
Aristotle noted that oligarchies use their power to further enrich themselves. Consider a hypothetical society where the government consistently bails out large corporations, which hits the general population with inflation, higher taxes, and reduced public services.
It's not hypothetical. This is for real. That's happening in the United States as we speak. Let's go back to hear what he said again.
In economic policies, do they tend to increase concentration of wealth? Aristotle noted that oligarchies use their power to further enrich themselves.
An example of that is members of Congress trading stocks. Simple.
Consider a hypothetical society where the government consistently bails out large corporations.
2008, they bailed out the banking industry. Even though they were doing shady shit, even though you and I lost our homes, they were doing shady shit. And I think like one person went to jail. They brought down the world's economy, and I believe it was only one person went to jail.
Which hits the general population with inflation, higher taxes, and reduced public.
And what do you think we're dealing with now? Inflation, higher taxes,
services. Over time, this could lead to bails out large corporations, which hits the general population.
When he says a lack of social services, they're talking about taking away retirement. They're talking about doing away with education. They're talking about doing away with Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. You know what I mean? So you have to pay attention to history. History is telling us what they're trying to do again. They would rather break society. They would rather break the rules of society than play fair.
Inflation, higher taxes, and reduced public services. Over time, this could lead to increased wealth concentration. Another key indicator is access to political office. In a true oligarchy, only the wealthy can realistically attain positions of power.
You see how
As
many
mentioned,
millions of
this might not
dollars-
be an explicit law.
You see how many millions of dollars it takes. You know, qualifying is one thing, paying to be a part of the political race is another, and then you get into the ads and stuff like that. Like, you have to be rich to run for office. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's out here, she has to run around and hustle to get small amount donors and stuff like that, you know. And there's just people out here who have the money to squash all that. J.D. Vance is one. J.D. Vance was never in politics. He made friends with the right people, and those people paid to get him to where he is now. And you can't tell me that Trump is convinced that that's his dude. You can't tell me that Trump is ecstatic that J.D. Vance is his running mate. You can't.
Picture a hypothetical political system where running for office requires millions in personal funds or
We're
backing
there.
from wealthy donors. This effectively restricts political participation to the rich or those supported by the rich.
If you have money, you can run for office, even if you're full of shit.
Related to this is the question of who has genuine access to lawmakers and regulators. In an oligarchic system, the wealthy few have the ear of those in power, while ordinary citizens struggle to make their voices heard. Imagine a scenario where industry leaders regularly...
And we see that a lot today, too. You and I can't just walk up to a politician and be like, yo, we need blah, blah, blah. But you see rich people do it. You go to all these fancy dinners and the fundraisers and stuff like that. You pay for access, whether or not it's good for society. There's a lot going wrong today because greedy people are the leaders. And for some reason, there's a lot of very normal folks that don't have a lot of anything thinking that they're a part of the cool kids club, and they're just not.
At meetings with lawmakers and powerful bureaucrats to discuss policy, while requests for meetings from ordinary citizens and smaller organizations are usually denied or ignored. Also look for a so-called revolving door between government and the private sector. If you see a constant flow of individuals moving between positions of political power...
What he's describing is everyone who goes to Washington and then they come out and they end up being lobbyists for corporations that are trying to get things changed in their favor in the laws, right? So there's that. And the other one is all of the people that were politicians or in someone's cabinet, and then they go out and they're on like MSNBC or Fox or whatever. You know what I mean? That's the revolving door that he's talking about. All the cool kids, all these people went to school together. All these people have had relationships. Just continue to make laws that benefits them, don't necessarily benefit normal people.
If you see a constant flow of individuals moving between positions of political power and high-level corporate roles, that might indicate the kind of close alliance between wealth and governance that Aristotle associated with oligarchy. Picture a situation where a high-ranking official in the finance ministry leaves his post for a lucrative position in a major bank, or a former minister getting hired in a corporation within his former portfolio. Social mobility is another crucial factor. Aristotle understood that oligarchies work to maintain class distinctions. Consider a hypothetical society where the cost of education has skyrocketed to the point where only the children of wealthy families can attend universities without incurring crippling debt, thereby limiting opportunities for advancement for those from less affluent backgrounds.
How many of us have gone to a school being promised jobs and being promised opportunities and all this good stuff, and then we say, all right, cool. Some of our parents work their asses off to pay for them. Some of us have to join the army and work while they go to school. You know what I'm saying? There's a bunch of rich kids that didn't have to do that. All they had to do is show up, go to school, make friends with all the rich and powerful people, wash, rinse, repeat. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same thing. We're seeing the same people. We're seeing the same families running for office and getting there. And there's not a lot of change.
Remember, Aristotle didn't see these as isolated factors, but as symptoms of a political system that prioritizes the interests of the wealthy few over the common good. No society perfectly fits any single model of governance, and elements that might appear oligarchic could exist within various other political systems. The key is to look at the overall pattern and to consider how political and economic power are distributed and used. The good news is that Aristotle found oligarchies to be inherently unstable, second only to tyrannies in their short lifespan. The bad news is that they are often replaced by another perverted form of government. He recognized that political regimes fall for many reasons, but he saw revolt as a primary cause, particularly in oligarchies. One interesting observation he made was about the introduction of new cultural or ethnic groups into an existing political community. He argued that this could be a significant source of instability and conflict, especially if these groups don't quickly develop a shared sense of identity or common purpose with the existing population. Internal conflict among the oligarchs themselves is another major factor. This could be a situation where a small group within the oligarchy becomes greedy and attempts to monopolize all the offices of power. Aristotle.
And then within the Republican Party, you have the MAGA Party, the subset of the Republicans, and to me it seems as if they are greedier, whether they want more money, whether they want more power, whether they want more attention, whatever it is, they're greedy for that thing. And so that's what he's describing. There's a fracture in the party because you have one group that's fighting with it, and they're basically the same thing. They're just fighting with each other because they want more of what the other one has.
Aristotle noted that his hyper-concentration of power often leads to resentment and conflict within the ruling class, destabilizing the entire system. Perhaps the most significant threat to oligarchies, in Aristotle's view, comes from popular revolt against state-sanctioned oppression. The constant tension between the rich and the poor creates a powder keg of social unrest. He also noted the role of populist leaders. These figures would emerge and capitalize on the people's discontent by promising reforms. While this will sometimes lead to one of the three so-called true regime types, Aristotle observed that they often result in a new oligarchy or even tyranny. Another fascinating insight from Aristotle concerns the generational aspect of oligarchic decline. He said that the children of oligarchs, raised in luxury and comfort, tend to become degenerate and weak over time. Meanwhile, the children of the poor are hardened by their difficult circumstances.
What he just got done saying is very true. I know a lot of kids from rich people that just ain't shit. They are just lazy, entitled. And then when you take those kids and then you make them think that they can run the country because they've been handed everything, you know what I mean? You haven't had to work for anything, so you think that everything is that easy, and it's not. I'm telling you, this dude, it's triggering.
Become tough. This disparity equips the poor to rebel successfully against their rulers. As we wrap up, Aristotle's analysis of oligarchy provides us with some timeless insights into the dynamics of wealth and power in governance. From the gradual rise of oligarchic rule to the tactics used by the wealthy few to maintain their grip on power, these ancient observations may, perhaps, maybe, resonate a bit in our modern world. I'd love to hear your perspective. Are there parallels you can draw to your own society? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments.
Yeah, so that's what Aristotle thought about oligarchies. And there's going to be a link to the original video in the description of this video, so you can watch it without me babbling all over it. But he basically is describing what we're going through. We have a lot of rich people trying to tell poor people the what's what. For some reason, there's a bunch of poor people that they don't see the problem with what's happening in today's government. The government is supposed to take care of the people, and right now it's just kind of like they're taking care of the rich people. That's for sure. They're taking care of corporations because corporations make money. But for some reason, they forget that they're pulling taxes from us. So you have to listen to what we say because we're kicking in. And then they use our taxes to further enrich themselves and to further enrich corporations and to bend the rules and stuff like that. It's interesting to see that people don't really change. Aristotle, I don't remember how long ago he lived, but you know, he's one of the first philosophers out there that was telling people, beware of people. People are greedy. People ain't shit. Yeah. Anyway, very interesting video. Let me know your thoughts. I wanna have a conversation, and I bring these videos to your attention not to pick a fight or anything, but to get the conversation going because we need to learn from each other. Let me know your thoughts in the description of this video, and maybe we can have this conversation just keep going. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with each and every one of your friends. And if you want to come hang out with me while I watch videos and work on creative projects, hit that subscribe button and click that little bell right next to the subscribe button so every time I come out with something new, you'll be alerted. Don't forget to get your clothes at coconutjustice.com. Bunch of really cool things that I think would look good on you. I hope you have a wonderful day. And with that, I'm out.